Is there anybody there?
All right, so let's get started here. I literally got 2 jugs of water ready to go.
Yeah, I've got this cool jug that when I went that night job the other night, we stopped at Buc-ee's,
Oh, of course you did.
and so got this, and it's got all the times of the day, 64 ounces. So my goal is to drink minimum of one of these a day.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
I should get better at drinking water. I really should.
I had a 24-ounce mug, that Clemson mug that I was using, and then I carried around a big jug of water, and I just kept refilling it. I'm like, I need a big jug, and I didn't want a big jug that I had to turn up. This one's perfect. It's got a handle, it's got a zipper, it's got a strap. I can grab it,
you are ready to go.
Carry it. I mean, this is rock and rolling right
You are
here.
a Buc-ee's fanatic.
Oh, hey, Rhonda wanted to go get the Valentine's Day shirt. So,
hey, twist my arm, right?
Exactly.
All right, well, let's get started here.
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the DHE podcast. My name is Ed, also known as the Data, and with me I got my good friend, my companion, one of the co-hosts of the Data Chronicles sports show. That's right. Val is not with us tonight. We will be doing something a little bit different. Okay, so we are starting a little segment. We're going to be talking all about sports, right? This is the new year. This is the first recording of 2025. So I put it on Twitter, I put it on Threads, and I asked everybody, was like, hey, do you want to hear about more about other sports? You want to hear just strictly baseball? And it was overwhelmingly in favor of other sports, which I'm okay with because I'm a fan of all sports, right? Except for tennis. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. I guess the Australian Open is going on right now, so
it should be starting. If it's
there's your tennis talk right there, right? All right. So, but again, like I said, one of my good friends, my co-host, Donnie Wise, also known as the Mayor. My friend, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Glad to hop on here with you and talk some sports topics and see what we can get into here for this episode.
I'm sure we will agree on everything, right?
Like always.
Right. And just so you guys know, Data Chronicles Sports Show, it is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. Make sure you guys go ahead and hit the subscribe and like button so that way you guys are always in the know. All right. And then also make sure you tell one more person about this. All right, Donnie. The first topic that I want to discuss, because we had a little pre meeting, and then we discussed what we wanted to talk about. And one of the things that we have been having a ton of discussion, and especially me, I've been trolling people on Threads, is the college football playoff.
Yep.
And I want to get your thoughts on it because obviously we go back and forth on some of these things, and some of the things that we feel that should be tweaked. But I want to get your thoughts first on how do you feel about so far this new version of the college football playoffs.
I mean, I think it's better than it was. I think each step has been an improvement. Obviously, there's a lot of things they're going to have to adjust and tweak going forward. But until you change something, you really don't know what you need to fix about it. So you got to pick a starting point. So I like the 12 teams. I don't think you could have. I mean, you could have gone just with 8 and not had the buys. The problem is they're trying to accommodate everybody that's always complained.
Correct.
And you can't do that. You've got to say, this is what we're going to do, like it or not. I mean, you'd have 4 teams, and you'd have the teams that are 5 and 6 in some of these smaller conferences complaining that they didn't have a shot. They go undefeated, like a Boise State would go undefeated, or somebody like that would go undefeated, and they're like, we can't even get into the 4-team playoff. So now they throw 12 out there. There's plenty of slots for you, but then they give you a bye. And it's like,
I know.
You went too far with that one. It's like, we're going to make you a spot, and we're going to give you a bye for your conference if you're one of the higher ranked conferences. And so they got to adjust that.
Yeah,
but overall,
100%.
It's an improvement.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to, put words in your mouth or anything like that, but I think we can both agree that seeding needs to be tweaked, at this point, right? I don't think that just because you won your conference, you get to have an automatic bye. I think it should be like like basketball and college basketball, that you win your conference, that gives you an automatic bid into the playoff. At that
Yeah.
point, you made it, right? That's it. We're good. Thank you. And then have a reseeding of the teams that are put into the college football playoff.
Yeah, I don't know how much the playoff committee utilizes the data that they got back when it used to be a lot of computerized, even back in the
Yeah,
BCS era. I hope they use some of that in companion with their eye test, because I think the problem that started it was the computers, and everybody's like, well, a computer can't see the eye test of a team; they're just looking at numbers. Okay, you got to have both. I hope they didn't go the other way. Hopefully, they also take that into account with as they tweak this, because I think if you take the computer modules that they used to use,
yeah,
and apply that with, then at least as a component or some percentage of the rankings of the teams,
correct.
because you start looking, everybody start complaining about strength of schedule and all these, not to pick on Virgil's favorite team, Mercer, but you see these teams like that getting scheduled against Alabama's and so forth, and they're good teams in their own right, but that should be hurting your strength of schedule, and it doesn't affect it as much as it should be in the eye test part of it, because they're like, well, it's Alabama, they should beat these people. But let's put a computer module to it, because they don't play everybody in their conference, because the conferences have gotten so big. They play a random level of non-conference teams to begin with. So add that in, add the committee's eye test, get rid of the buys except for the top 4 teams. Whoever the top 4 teams are, they get the buy.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And something that you said regarding the those easy games that they get to play, right? Like, I mean, I get that, right? You want a game or two at the beginning of the season, which I'm okay. I'm in favor of that. I'm good with that. I'm good with you
It's
having the
the
Mercer,
early
right?
ones is right. The early ones are the good ones. Is when you schedule them in towards the end of the season as sort of almost like a bye week is what you're scheduling, a practice week.
Right. And that's my issue, is that,
Yeah.
my issue is like really, you're gonna put, Mercer at the end of the season, and then you're going, and again, sorry, Virgil, we're not picking on your team. But it's just the name that came up. But right, like, I mean, you want to make sure
Yeah.
that you are, if you're gonna do that, you gotta make sure that that if you put that at the end of the season, that is gonna hurt your chances of your strength of schedule, because at that point your strength of schedule goes down.
Yeah, and it should affect to me, it should affect your strength of schedule more if you schedule them at the end of the season versus that same team if you schedule them at the beginning of the year, because again, it's all about money. We all know that. So it's all about money for the small schools. That's how they fund their programs, is getting these paychecks to come play.
Correct.
And every once in a while, somebody will upset somebody randomly or make a run at it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it used to be, even before the whole BCS came about, you always had those 3 or 4 games at the beginning of the season, and then you started your conference schedule, and that's kind of how it was. And then you started having these matchups of ACC versus SEC and a kickoff game, and week 0 games and all that kind of mess. And so a lot of the teams started shuffling some of these weaker teams to later in the year, right before a big rivalry game. So it's like, okay, we play our conference schedule, we get to the end of the year, and it's either a conference big rivalry like the Alabama Auburn is, or it's a like South Carolina Clemson. That's always the Saturday of Thanksgiving. Sometimes Clemson, sometimes South Carolina will schedule a weaker team right before that. It doesn't happen every year. I think I even mentioned that, normally we did this year. But the last 4 or 5 years, it's just all been conference games. So all that should be taken into account when it comes to strength of schedule, not just who you play, when you play them. And then a lot of the stuff about Alabama, everybody's like, you lost to 2 6-6 teams. Yeah, and they're like, yeah, but they were SEC teams. Like, well, that
So
doesn't matter. Just because they're SEC teams doesn't mean they're better 6-6 teams.
yeah, and I think this is also goes into what we were talking about, that the SEC is no longer the SEC that we know. The Big Ten is not the Big Ten that we know, right? Everything has changed, and I
Right.
think that NIL has really, has leveled out the playing field for a lot of teams, because we always talked about it. Okay, so now this player who could be starting in another team now has a chance to go to whatever, FIA or whatever, right? Florida
Yeah.
International, right? And then FIU, and then get millions of dollars, right?
Right.
Prime example. All right, listen, we got Carson is it Beck, right?
Yeah.
So who just left Georgia. It is now he now transferred to Miami, the University of Miami, and is making $10 million.
Right.
Right. So he's making more than a lot of rookie NFL quarterbacks right now.
Yeah.
And does not need to go into the NFL. Why? Because one, he's already pretty popular. He's going to go to a pretty, notable big school. So why even go? So now we're having all this we're having this conversation. It's like, well, he was in the SEC. That's the best conference. Says who?
Right. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And they like to still claim they are, and that's fine. I mean, they're in bed with ESPN. ESPN promotes them, has their network, all that kind of stuff. And from the money standpoint, as far as ESPN's concerned, SEC is the best conference. Fox, of course, is the Big Ten version.
Yep.
So, they're going to tout that. And to some extent they are, but they're only that way, in my opinion, because they've been manufactured to be that way.
Oh my God, it's
Because
such a pain in my.
they get ranked. They rank all these teams. You rank 7 or 8 of the teams in each of these conferences in the top 20, and then they beat up the lower teams within their own conference. And then when they play each other as highly ranked teams, it's touted as a big game. And whoever loses doesn't drop very much because they lost to a highly ranked opponent, or vice versa. It's like it's all a shell game, in my opinion, the way it's done. And the other conferences, the Big 12, the ACC, and the former Pac-12, which is the Pac-2 now. The Pac-12's having.
Why even stay there? Just like,
yeah. I mean, I'll give them credit. They're rebuilding it, and they're taking the money that all the other teams left behind, which is good.
yeah,
Because they still have the contractual obligations, so they're getting paid, and they're kind of rebuilding it. But again, they're not even going to be what they once were, because all the big, blue blood schools that were part of it are gone to these other conferences.
correct.
And eventually something else is going to come along. It's going to change. I don't know what it is, but
It always does.
Yeah, a lot of these teams are going to pull away. The conferences are going to maybe go away. Who knows? But you're right. These portal things, as far as the player, taking money to go somewhere else and stay a year in college rather than go pro. I mean, you got guys that are going to end up playing 4 or 5 years and make all the money they're ever going to make, because they're never going to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
But they're going to get paid a lot of college money to help promote these programs, and all the money they make. And then they're going to just be like a college legend or some kind, but they're never going to play in the NFL.
It's like the minor league system for the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, again, we always say it all the time. I mean, if you can get the money, get it. But don't tell me that the system is one way when it really isn't that way.
I definitely do not want to hear it from coaches saying that the system is broken. You broke the system.
Right.
You know what I mean? Les Miles is perfect example, right? He is complaining about players transferring. They shouldn't be like, this dude has constantly been transferring, from school to school to school because of money. He's got more money everywhere else. It has broken his contract, has left the team there, dry at ball games and at championship games. So, I don't want to hear from coaches saying, well, the system is broken. You know what? Death ear. Definitely.
Yeah, and that the funny thing is, and I know everybody jokes on Dabo, and I'll get into this for just a second, about not using the portal. Well, and that he needs to adapt, or they're going to fall behind. You know what's going to happen, or what is happening, is all these teams that were complaining about him not using the portal and him falling behind the times, they're coming back to him because he looked at the portal the last few years. He's not found players in the portal better than what he feels he has on his team. This year, we've brought in more portal players because
Yeah.
it's not like he's refused to adapt, just like Paul Feinbaum has said. He's not refusing to do anything. He's being smart about how he does it. He's not just taking whatever. And I saw an article the other day that said that Clemson has the best retention rate of players from the leaving for the portal versus what they've got coming in. And granted, he hasn't had anything coming in for a while, but he's +3 this year. He's brought in 5 guys.
He's
and
also
only lost
hasn't
3.
hasn't had a lot of opportunities for. It hasn't really shown a lot that he can win, right? So that's the thing, though. He's going to get measured on whether or not you're going to make it back to the college playoff.
Right, and that's not necessarily an issue with the portal either. That's been more coaching.
Yeah,
because
100%.
That's
we
a
can get into that
issue.
one all
That's
day.
not a portal issue. Because show me the teams that have leapfrogged Clemson just because of the portal. There isn't any. There's players that have come to a team. Ohio State maybe gets a player, so they only get 1 or 2 players from the portal that make any kind of impact.
Right. Remember when Desmond Howard was like, "Well, they bought players." Not really. No. Like, I mean, those players have been there. Have they gotten a couple players here and there? Absolutely. Well, so has Michigan. So
Right.
let's not say that, a lot of these players have been recruited and they have been there for a long time. So, it falls on deaf ears when you say something like that. Ohio
Right.
State has done it. Alabama, Michigan, all these Big Ten, even ACC and SEC teams have done it. They have all done it.
Yeah, and that's what goes back to what you said earlier about the playing field being more leveled because all of the teams are doing it. You've got some teams that jumped all into the portal and started bringing in as many guys from other schools as they could. But what have we been saying about that is they're leaving the program for multiple reasons. And the last reason that they're leaving is because they're so good they want to go somewhere else. They're leaving because they're not getting playing time, they're not getting the money they want, or they're just not happy with the program. It's not like, oh, I'm leaving because I'm so good, I deserve to play for a better school.
Correct.
And it's not like Ohio State is out there collecting, 6 Heisman candidates for their team. That's not happening that way.
No.
They're collecting 8 or 10 guys, and they might have 1 or 2 that pan out. It's like a free for all.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? We're not saying that there's anything wrong with that. We're just saying that they're taking advantage of the situation that they have been put in, right? Because they are
the media shouldn't be selling me a bill of goods that this is the way it is, and if you don't do this, then you're going to get left behind. No, you're not going to get left behind. Everyone else is going to eventually slow down to you.
Listen, we watch ESPN. You and me, we watch ESPN at nauseum, right? We watch NBC Sports. We do that. We watch it. We love our sports. My issue with ESPN right now is that it has become very evident that they are favoring one thing or another, right? It is as clear as day. They favor the SEC right now. They're showing us it's like they're coming from the top. It's like, hey guys, we need you guys to talk about the SEC. The SEC is what we need to talk about because we have this contract with them and we need to push it. That's right. And that's my problem with Paul Feinbaum. Let's calm down. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Last time I checked, no SEC team is in the college football playoff championship.
Right.
And the only SEC team who was, by the way, from a different conference was the last one standing.
Yeah. I mean, they've only been in the SEC this year. So
right.
I barely even count that as an SEC team making it.
Correct.
It's a technicality issue to me because Texas is basically a Big 12 team that joined your conference and then beat everybody to the end of the line.
Right. It just got lucky with again, our issue, and then we can have a discussion about this all for a whole while. Reseeding, that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Because they were able to take advantage of the seeding that they got. Oregon, on the other hand, got screwed on seeding.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Oregon should have had. They should have had won the bye to play the team that was coming from the
They were the
lowest
number one
seed
team
first game. Right.
all year.
Right. They ended up kind of in a weird spot where they were the number one team all year, and then by the time it gets to where they're placed, their opponent is going to be somewhere in the middle of those first four games, not the lowest seeded games.
Ohio State put a whooping on them.
Yeah.
That was not a good game. So,
and that was payback for Oregon winning the first game in a way, because that's
I would
how
say
Oregon,
that
I think,
Ohio State lost that game more than Oregon won the last
exactly.
time.
And I think Ohio State was pissed, and they wanted to, rectify that issue and show that, they should have won the first game, and we're going to do everything we can to show you. And again, Oregon's a Pac-12 team. They're not a Big Ten team.
They're not.
So,
neither is Washington.
Yeah. If you think
Give
about it,
another year, and then we can talk about whether that
exactly. They came into the Big Ten, and then they got a very favorable Big Ten schedule, and then got lucky that, like you said, Ohio State lost that game more than they beat Ohio State when it came down to it. Otherwise, they're not even in the playoff. If they lose that game to Ohio State, they may not even be making the playoff, because they would have lost that game early. And if that's their only loss, then they may end up making it like Penn State or somebody. One of the other teams came in from the conference as well.
Well, that's interesting.
But they wouldn't have been the top seed either.
Yeah, because that you know what, you're right. That's interesting. Huh? I didn't think about that. Also, Penn State choked again, as usual. You get to the big game, you can't win a big game. So,
well, and then talking about the players, I was going to bring this up when you're talking about the players jumping as well, for money or for whatever. How about the earlier the year, the quarterback from UNLV that sat after 3 games? He's like, I'm not playing that 4th game in Burning this year because you haven't given me my NIL money.
Correct.
He's not going to play. And then he's entered the transfer portal and leaving UNLV over NIL dispute. So now,
where did he end up going to?
I don't know if he's made a decision at this point. The last article I see is from October. So I'm not sure at this time what he chose to go to. But just the fact that he can sit there and say, no, I'm going to sit after 3 games, because if you play the fourth game, then that year counts. And you're like, okay, I'm going to get an extra year here because I'm going to transfer out, and it's okay. And everybody's like fine with it. It's like, wait a minute, that shouldn't happen either.
Well, at the same time, the schools kind of screwed him over at the same time.
Right. Well, the thing is, did the school screw him over or not? Because there's no real rules on the NIL. So he's saying he got screwed over. The school maybe saying that they didn't. Who knows? Because there's no set rule for how this is going to work. It's all still very, very fluid. So, again, that goes back to, do you want to use the portal to improve your team? Do you bring a guy in like that if he's not going to get his money, he's going to go somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, how many years can you do that? Like, you guys 8 and 9 years in college, like, just keep hanging on. Like, what are we doing here?
And I'm one that I'm gonna more likely than not, I'm gonna side with the player on this one.
Yeah.
But the only reason is, for so long, NCAA and colleges were able to take advantage of the name and likeness, right?
Right.
They were able to sell all that merchandise. The players could not get a single dime out of it. Now they are, and now a lot of the colleges are upset that the players are able to do that. So they're trying to find the loophole and to try to get the power back.
Right. I mean, it's funny. This all started with Johnny Manziel.
Oh God, yeah,
because
yeah.
and
With Texas A&M.
that's what is so funny to me about it is like the guy that was all about the money symbol and money. The whole reason NIL kind of morphed into what it is was because Texas A&M was making a fortune off of him, and he couldn't sign his signature and get paid for it, or he couldn't go to a card show, or he couldn't sell. They were selling a ton of jerseys, and it's like they're you're right. They're getting what they
Reaped.
deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a good conversation, my friend. I like this one. I like this one that we've been talking about this for a while now, and now that we're at the time of this recording, right? We know who are the top two teams that are going to make it to the college football playoff championship, right? Which is Ohio State and Notre Dame. In my opinion, I think those are the top two teams that are the best teams left in the playoff. So,
yeah, I mean, everybody was like, Georgia. Georgia's not been that good of a team all year long.
They haven't
skated by on a lot of stuff. Texas has not been that good a team all year. They've kind of skated by. I mean, it really, Penn State just Penn Stated. So
Penn State will do Penn State things.
Yeah, because people used to say that about Clemson. Clemson's just Clemsoning. They get there and then they choke, and then until we didn't. So, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame has been, and I hate to say it because Notre Dame's kind of a pretender to me because they sort of got a toe in the water for the ACC.
Ooh, our friend Eric is gonna get you.
But hey, all credit to Notre Dame. They have, and I love Marcus Freeman. I think that guy is one hell of a coach.
Yeah.
And I picked them to win it all earlier, last week. So
you just picked them to win it all because you hate Ohio State.
Well, true, but I also think, looking at it, I mean, granted, Ohio State's kind of got a little fire under their their skin right now, but I just thought that Notre Dame is a more complete team overall. And they've gotten better and better as the season's gone along, in my opinion.
Do you think that Notre Dame is a more complete team over Ohio State?
More balanced and complete, yeah.
Interesting.
I think Ohio State makes too many mistakes, and they overcome a lot of mistakes because they've got.
So does Notre Dame.
True,
Notre Dame
but I just
only won by 3.
It's just, again, it's my opinion. I think that they are, to me,
your opinion is wrong, Donnie.
And we'll see how it shakes out. It's going to be a good game. I will say that. I think it'll be a good game. It's not one of these where I think Ohio State's going to come out and blow the tops off on Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not going to let that happen. And Notre Dame's they've got a lot of good players. Their only weakness is the quarterback can be a little sketchy at times. But
yeah,
again, that's because they've utilized the portal the last 2 years and brought an ACC quarterback to Notre Dame. And so, they had Hartman last year, but they surrounded him with a team that all they needed was a guy that can manage it. And he managed it. And that's the same thing they've done this year.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, we're not saying, don't use the portal. Do it. Here's my problem. I don't know if it's a problem, but I think it's gonna, now Marcus Freeman is about to interview for the Chicago Bears job. What do you do? Like, do you leave Notre Dame to go to Chicago? You know what I mean? That's gonna be different. And everybody's like, well, these players are making millions of dollars. Nobody's going to listen to it. A lot of these players that he has in Notre Dame are making millions of dollars. So it's not like it hasn't changed, right? And again, we also talk about that. That all of these players are making money. A lot of these players are not.
Right.
Okay.
There's only a handful that make a lot of money.
It's only a handful that are making the money, and the other ones are just there. They're on scholarship, on their loan, or they're playing, whatever. So I don't know.
Yep.
Good conversation, my friend. I think we'll see how this shakes out. By the time we have our we meet again on this episode on an episode, we've already the championship has already been decided. Well, actually, it's going to be January 20th, so yeah, it will be decided by then. All right, so there you have an interesting question that you brought up to me, right? Because we're talking about football, we're talking about the NFL, and you said that you wanted to talk about first round quarterbacks, whether we sit them or start them. And I know you have a list, so
Yep.
I'm gonna let you go ahead and read it off.
Yeah, so we got talking about like how Bryce Young kind of had a resurgence after getting benched earlier this year. He needed to sit and wait, and then of course you've had your C.J. Strouds from last year that came in at the same time and was better off the bat. Everybody's like, oh, Panthers made a horrible mistake. They should have got C.J. Stroud. I was one of them. I thought C.J. Stroud was a better
So did I.
And maybe he still is, but some of these guys coming out, they just need some time. And that's something that they don't have anymore. And it seems like, I was trying to look back at see kind of where that started. It was early 2000s, I think, is where it really started after I think it really started when they went to right after the Sam Bradford deal, because Sam Bradford was the last guy to like get drafted, get $50 million and not work out. And people are like, okay, we got to have a quarterback structure, salary structure going in, like levels to start with. And these rookie deals began so that they weren't having to pay a guy $50 million. That
I feel bad though for Sam Bradford, because Sam Bradford was injury prone too.
True.
A lot of injuries. That offensive line was shit.
But he didn't deserve at that time. He didn't deserve a $50 million contract. That would be like drafting Bryce Young #1 and giving him a $350 million contract to start. Like he hasn't even done anything. Because $50 million back then
that's a lot of money.
What 350 is now.
Yeah.
From that standpoint, because it was $50 million over a few years.
Yep.
So that's what started it. And we started the conversation, about some of the guys that have sat, like Jordan Love with Green Bay. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers for a few years, and everybody questioned Green Bay. Like, what are they doing? They drafted this guy. Why are they not playing him? Is he not any good?
Right. Right.
They knew he was good, and it was cheap enough to keep him on the bench because they weren't paying him. And that's the whole issue in the media is you got some of the media saying you need to play him while he's cheap, and the other saying you need to sit him while he's cheap.
We need to play it now. We need it now. We want it now. We want it now. We're in that society and where we want it right away.
Right, because the fan base wants to see the immediate result of this top draft pick that's supposed to be so great. Well, one, top draft picks, we all know, go to the worst teams. Two, they're probably the worst team because of the coaching, and now the coach is trying to survive on a player that's supposed to come in and do everything for them.
Yep.
And some of these guys are just not ready.
Nope.
But it depends again, and some of this will change too with what we just talked about. How long do they stay in college? Are they 21, 22 coming out of college? Or are they 23, 4, or 5 coming out of college?
And I was just you took my point, because that's what I was going to talk about. Like, are they developing in college? Right. If you have someone that's only spent 2 years in college and only really play the last year, bro, you got to sit down.
Exactly.
And you got to learn. But you have someone like Bo Nix, right, who went to Auburn, then went to Oregon, right, and spent a couple of years developing in different systems. And, he has shown that he's been successful right now. Now, we'll see, because, there's always that second year slump that, we talk about, but we'll see if it pans out.
Right.
So,
and a lot of times that slump comes because they get the tape on you and they start figuring out your tendencies, because that's their job. That's all they do is to figure out how to stop you. But you're right. Bo Nix had over 60 games under his belt in college. That's like for God's sakes,
that dude got married.
Yeah, it's like 3 NFL seasons worth of games. It's like he's coming into the league in his 4th year now, kind of thing. So that being said, I was kind of looking back at and trying to find out, who was where and who started when and so forth and so on. So just to rattle off a few. So these are some of the quarterbacks in the and this is like, this list goes back to like 1920. Excuse me.
Oh, wow.
19 or 20 years to 2000.
Oh, okay.
So these are the quarterbacks that have come in first round and started right away. Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Jameis Winston, Andrew Luck, Cam Newton, Sam Bradford, Stafford, David Carr, Carson Wentz, Mariota, RG3, Darnold, Matt Ryan, Mark Sanchez, Ryan Tannehill, EJ Manuel, Joe Flacco. But then you get down here, you got Kyle Bowler, Brandon Whedon, Derek Carr.
What?
I mean, Deshaun Kaiser, one of your.
Well, you've already said two of them.
Yeah. Quincy Carter, Mike Glennon, Russell Wilson, Kyle Orton, Winky, Dak Prescott. Those guys all started right away, first week. All right. You go to week 2 to 8. Mm-hmm. So these guys didn't start the first week, but sometime in the 2nd through 8th week, they came in. And you got Joey Harrington, Daniel Jones, Blaine Gabbert, Ben Roethlisberger, Jimmy Clausen, Baker Mayfield, Bortles, Vince Young,
for the Browns,
Byron Leftwich, Josh Rosen, Teddy Bridgewater. Well, y'all had 40 quarterbacks. You're going to have a few on this list. So, but, I mean, some of these guys I don't even remember. Trent Edwards, Trubisky, Leinart, Colt McCoy, Tua, Christian Ponder, Josh Freeman, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson. Some of these guys, I mean, I remember Josh Freeman was like a thing, and then he wasn't. So then you got the guys that started the second half of the season.
Right.
Dwayne Haskins, Jared Goff, Eli Manning, Jason Campbell, Nick Foles, Alex Smith, Cutler, Drew Lock, Charlie Fry, Hurts, Derek Anderson, Patrick Ramsey, Tavares Jackson, Jamarcus Russell. I mean, those are all guys that started at some point in the first season that they were a pro.
Talk about a major bust, though, Jamarcus Russell.
I mean, how many names out of that are like seriously legit quarterbacks? I mean, you've got Stafford is a long time, Roethlisberger. Some of these we don't know about yet. Cam Newton worked out. I mean, you might have had 3 or 4 guys total out of all those names. But then this is where it jumps. So you got these are the guys that started in year 2 that sat a whole 1 year. Carson Palmer, Michael Vick, Jake Locker, Pat Mahomes, J.P. Lossman, Drew Brees, Simeon, Jacoby Brissett, Mark Bulger, Tim Tebow, Tom Brady, Chad Henne, Chris Sims, Brady Quinn, Colin Kaepernick, Josh McCown. You're seeing after that 1 full year of sitting, you're seeing a better level of guys, a little more.
The percentage gets better as for success.
Right. There's only 3 guys on this list that started year 3, that sat for 2 years and didn't start till year 3. Phillip Rivers, Tony Romo, and Chad Pennington.
Man.
And then you get to year 4. It only goes to people that started 4 plus after their 4th plus year. Rex Grossman, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Schaub, Kirk Cousins, Matt Castle, Garoppolo, Osweiler, David Garrard. So those are all in the last 24 years, first-round quarterbacks that started either week 1, first half, second half, or year 2, 3, or 4.
So year 2 and year 3 really is the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot, because if you haven't started until year 4, then
what's wrong?
There's a reason maybe that you're not, and somebody eventually takes a shot, because there's still a couple of good ones there. But 2 and 3, like you get that second, third year in, that's when you should be able to take over the
curve right there. It's like, okay, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, exactly.
At that point, it's you're back up.
Yeah, and I get it when they want to start this guy. We got to find out what he can do. Put him out there. He's not costing us anything. But what if they gave up on Bryce Young after last year? They're like, oh, this guy's a bust. We're just going to cut our losses. And he goes somewhere else, and he gets into that second and third year now with another team, a la Sam Darnold. Look at what Sam Darnold's done this year. I mean, he was seeing ghosts a few years ago with a horrible Jets team that's still horrible. He took a pit stop in Carolina. He took a pit stop in San Francisco. And, I mean, we've even joked about this. Him and Baker Mayfield made that Carolina pit stop. They made the California pit stop, one in San Francisco, one in L.A., and now look at what they're doing. I mean, obviously Baker's been in there a little bit longer than Darnold, but still, some guys just need time and they need the right system.
So I'll be the first one to say, dude, I hated Baker Mayfield. Absolutely. In Cleveland, fucking hated him. Right? He played like shit. And the problem is he came in with this cockiness, but then didn't back up what was going on. Right? If you were to just, all right, humble yourself a little bit. I think that's what happened, right? He was humbled by being sent to Carolina. No offense, I know that's your team, but you know what I mean?
But he was.
Right. He was like, we're trading you to Carolina because we don't think you're that good. He had to take a step back and be like, shit, if I don't get it together, I'm out of the league. You know what I mean? So I'm not getting a contract extension.
He was on the road to being the next Johnny Manziel right behind him.
100%.
Because he came in, he wasn't quite as crazy out there with the ego as Manziel, but he wasn't far behind.
Yep.
And he's figured it out while he's still in the league. I think Manziel's figuring it out now that he's no longer in the league.
But that's his
got
fault.
His stuff together personally. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. It's like, okay, you gotta live and learn. I mean, imagine giving these guys at 21, 22, millions and millions of dollars, nothing but time on their hands, no structure as far as like classes and stuff. Not that they necessarily went to classes, but college life was a little more structured in some ways.
And I think there was also a maturity level. I think that's what we're talking about, right?
Right.
It goes back to the conversation that we were just having with college football, right? Now you're having these guys are coming in at 23, 24, 25. All right, now we have a little bit more maturity, and they're able to handle more things, as an adult. Johnny Manziel, let's be honest, that dude was irresponsible. He was childish. There was no talking to him. He would not listen. He would not read the playbook. None of that. Right. Yeah. So, and it showed.
Yeah.
If he would have just applied, he could have been special. He could have been that Drew Brees player. He could have been that Pat Mahomes, but he didn't because he didn't want to. Could no one tell him?
Right.
He could
just
not
wanted to party, have a good time. I got plenty of money, go to Vegas, he wanted to live the big life.
Well, and the funny thing is, he comes from oil money.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So like it was right in between the ears.
Yeah.
And that's what really pissed me off.
Yeah, and some of these kids, they come out and they are pretty mature because it goes back to, a lot of times goes back to your upbringing. If I don't know him personally, but if you're Manziel and you're a spoiled brat from oil money, you're going to live as a spoiled brat with money.
Correct.
If you come up with your family that's a little more supportive, a little more balanced, then you're going to have more of that maturity coming out of college because your family gave you some of that maturity. I mean, it's all upbringing and who you surround yourself with.
I agree. I 100% agree. I agree 100% on that one. So,
and that's one of the things I was hearing about Bryce Young. Again, like I said, I wasn't sure what we were doing at the beginning of the year playing him. I'm like, I just don't know about this guy. I was happy when he was benched because he wasn't doing anything good. But I was also the same guy that was happy when he came back and was becoming successful. And he changed my opinion of him.
You and me were having this conversation about him.
Yeah.
I was like, look at him. He got it together.
Like, he's like, okay, he looks like he knows what he's doing. It's like it's starting to click. And which is the reason this whole conversation we're having now came about, was talking about that. And the fact that he has this cool calmness about him. And everybody said he had that at Alabama. Well, he had it at Alabama because he didn't have to do as much at Alabama. He had such a powerhouse team around him.
Right.
That all he had to do was manage it. So it was easy to have it.
Wow,
then when you come to the NFL and it's all on your shoulders and you don't have that powerhouse team around you, that's overwhelming for a 20-something-year-old
And
kid
now you got to
take
learn the
in.
whole playbook. You got to learn the defenses playbook. You got to learn all your wide receivers, where they're supposed to be, where they in college, they fed him that information, right? Because
Yeah.
he didn't have to go through all that. But now you're in the NFL and it's like, oh boy, you know.
And the fact that that one play for them to win in overtime the last week, where he threw that pass and he turned around
and he
he
knew it.
showed, he's like, I knew it. Like, he just turned around and he knew that was a touchdown. Like he went from getting benched at the beginning of the season to ending his season with that kind of confidence.
Yep.
I'm all excited about him progressing next year if they can start getting some people around him. And what Dave Canales is doing with the Panthers, as a fan, I'm happy to see he's starting to make some progress here. If he can just keep the owner out of the way, we'll be all right.
That's a whole different conversation for another episode, because we can talk about ownership, and then that is going to be boy.
Because you and I both have terrible owners, yes, but right now our teams are in two different directions. Despite that, so
yep.
We're
number 2. My team being the Cleveland Browns. My team has the number 2 overall pick, which, by the way, they're saying it's a lock. Call it. They're getting a quarterback, right? Because Deshaun Watson, right? Because of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that, because I'm gonna go on a different tangent and we got to move on. But I love this one because this is a good segue of what our final topic here that you and me we're talking about here is dysfunctional teams.
and to your point, we don't have your team on this list right now, at least for what we talked about the other day. So as dysfunctional as they are, they're dysfunctional for another reason than the 3 primary dysfunctionalities that we said we were going to discuss.
So it was the Giants, the Jets, and what was the other third team? I didn't.
Oh no, it was on there. Ha ha ha! Just kidding. Your team.
Oh no, you know what? It is. It is.
Giants, it is your team. It was the Browns, Giants, and Jets. I'm sorry.
They are dysfunctional because of. They have a lot of good players. They have a really good head coach. I really am a fan of Stefanski, right? I am. Andrew Berry's a good GM. I'm a fan of GM. A lot of people they disagree with what a lot of the stuff that he's done. The one thing that I'm finally happy that it is done. The experiment is done. DePodesta is done in Cleveland. He's gone. No more. Right? He was always working remote. He wasn't even Cleveland. Right? He never really lived in Cleveland. He was always in California, which really pissed me the hell off. Right? You're
how
helping
can you do your job,
right? And you live in California. All right, so that's that. The Deshaun Watson, and before anybody says anything, and I'll say this because a lot of people are giving the Cleveland Browns a lot of shit for this. There were a lot of teams that were lined up to sign up to get Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Cleveland was actually not the team that he wanted to go to, and was not really leading candidate to get him.
Nope. They were actually out of the contention.
They were actually told they were out of it, and I don't even remember who the other teams were at that.
Atlanta point was going to be the one that they were going to go to. He was going to choose. He was going to choose Atlanta.
Yeah, in
retrospect, I wish he would have.
Well, yeah, I mean, and who knows where Atlanta would be, but I think everybody was shocked with Cleveland. And the problem was, again, your owner gave him a guarantee that none of the other teams were willing to give him as far as the total money.
And they shouldn't have.
They were all wanting to give him the same amount of money. I think they were actually offering him more money in Atlanta than the $230. They just weren't guaranteeing it.
They should have. And by the way, he actually might lose the last 2 years of his contract because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, how do you?
Why do you not wear your boot?
Right.
You're just 8 weeks out. You're supposed to wear it for 10 weeks. You don't wear your boot. You make a TikTok video in December while your team is playing, getting their asses handed to them, and you're doing TikTok videos in Miami.
Yeah, exactly. Which, like you said, what are you doing in Miami when your team's still playing anyway? So why are you on vacation because you're injured? I
That's
mean,
poor leadership, poor choice of what you're not a leader. You're not a football player at that point. You lost the respect of your locker room because you're making TikTok videos dancing while this team is getting their asses handed to them by the Baltimore Ravens.
yeah, yep. And like I said, you and I had the conversation. This is not the Deshaun Watson that I remember from school, from Clemson, that I rooted for. I'm not sure where his choices changed, other than they were in Houston's where they were. But I mean, I just don't know at what point in his life he stopped being the guy that he was, or at least he appeared to be, I should say.
Yep.
When he was in school. And again, same conversation we just had about a lot of these other guys. You get a lot of money at that age, and you're away from home. You got a lot of time on your hands, and if you don't surround your people with yourself with the right people, you make bad choices, and then you basically throwing it all away. I mean, this kid could have been a Hall of Fame quarterback. He had the talent to be that. He had the whole setup to be that, and then it just poof.
The city of
gone.
Cleveland gave you the keys to the city. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
they literally just open up their arms. They're like, all you had to do was come in and win.
That was as fresh a start as you could get from the turmoil he was in with all the lawsuits and everything. You got a team that's willing to just give you all this money. All you got to do is just come in, keep your nose clean, and play football.
And you couldn't even do that.
Couldn't even do that.
Unreal. So, all right, let's move on to another team that we have here, and is the New York Football Giants.
That's just a management nightmare right there. Like we talked about, I mean, teams don't like to go on Hard Knocks, and then you go on Hard Knocks, and you have edit control, and you don't edit out a conversation that was filmed with you basically letting the best player you had walk away so that you could pay another guy more money than he deserves.
You paid the wrong player.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a level of.
And by the way, both those players are no longer with the team.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you let the one guy walk that should have never walked, and you paid the other guy, and he just didn't earn it. He wasn't worth it because he shouldn't have been given it to begin with.
That's the whole thing. It's like you gave Daniels, Jesus Christ, all that money, and then you go in at that same year that you let Barkley go to Philadelphia, which, by the way, I mean, talk about just like, you know what I mean? Like, wow, he's still within your division. And
that's the other thing. Yeah. In the division too.
Oh,
it wasn't even that you let him go somewhere else. You let him go to the same division.
Well, in the general manager, he was such a cocky dude. So I was like, yeah, he's not going to get anything. And, I was like, yeah, go ahead. Find out. Figure out.
Yeah.
He sure did. The two players that have really made their opportunity is him and Henry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get that Tennessee was maybe trying to start over a little bit. They didn't want to pay that money, but I mean, Tennessee, Derrick Henry is all you had. I mean, if you'd kept him, maybe Will Levis looks like a better quarterback because he's got a running back to help take the pressure off. Who knows?
I was just thinking the same thing.
It's like the fact that the NFL has undervalued the running backs. Back to Le'Veon Bell. It started there. Le'Veon Bell thought he was worth $14 million, and Steelers were like, no, you're not. I mean, they'll, forgive me for saying this, piss away $60 million on a quarterback, but they won't give a running back $14 million. Like, that's like what? Like, a friend of mine used to say, you're tripping over dollars to pick up dimes.
Yep.
It's like, what are you doing?
Like, oh God,
pay the running back $14 million and then make the quarterback work, and you keep the running back happy. Like, how is that? I don't understand how you can't fit a $14 million contract for running back in a salary cap.
And not only that, but like everybody and their mother saw that Daniels was not the right quarterback for
Yeah.
the Giants. Everybody saw it. Everybody
Yeah.
saw it. But you're playing with analytics and you're playing with, thinking they'll say, well, the running back is not, we can just plug in any running back in that position and they'll be fine. There'll be no issues.
Right.
Forgetting that you have one of the best, most premier running backs in all of NFL,
Yep.
in all of professional football. And not only that, you look like an ass that when he's breaking records and he is getting those incentives and all of that because, boom, you let him go.
Yeah.
And now
Because
you
you
have
thought
nothing to
there's
show
nobody
for it.
going to, yeah, because you thought nobody's going to give him that kind of money. It's like, that just shows you had no real evaluation of your own talent at that point, because you should have been like, hey man, there's somebody's going to pay this guy and we better not let him walk. But
Yep. So, we talk about this functionality and all that, but there's one team that takes the cake when it comes to dysfunction. There's one team that, as bad as the Browns and as bad as the New York Giants are, there's one team that is just above all of that. They said, hold my beer, hold my liquor. We will be that team. And that is the New York Jets.
and it's funny, them and the Giants play in the same stadium,
Same
and
stadium.
they're both so dysfunctional. It makes no sense.
Like,
I mean, and the Jets tried. I give them credit; they tried. Like they were like, okay, we're going to go out. We're going to get Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. We're going to go get him. And then it just does not work.
here's my thing though, and you know how I feel about him.
Yeah, oh yeah,
So Aaron Rodgers, the last year and a half, 2 years in Green Bay, he was diminishing in talent.
yeah.
He was also becoming more of a cancer. He was more of a cancer than and more of a distraction that he was to help with the team.
Yeah.
So when
I
I
think the
saw that,
Jets. I think what the Jets saw though was the Jets saw that they didn't have a quarterback because they had drafted Darnold. They had drafted these other quarterbacks that weren't working out, and it was like, okay, we've got these receivers. They have these other skill position guys that are young. Let's go get a veteran quarterback that may be diminishing, that may be with whatever weird personal issues he deals with. He's still Aaron Rodgers. He comes to New York. He's got the limelight. Maybe it'll click. They're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, is what.
yep.
And who knows? Maybe if he doesn't go down in that first game with the Achilles issue, maybe this is a whole other story from last year. But he has the injury, and then how he handles the injury and the rehab and the whole logistics of that. Everybody, even his own teammates, were like rolling their eyes, just like you did. And I get it. I mean, I did too. It's like, what is this guy's deal here? Like, what is he doing? And
he wants to be the smartest person in the room.
And he always has tried to be that. And he's not that at all.
Just because you're smart doesn't mean you're a dumbass.
The thing is, he got away with it more before because he was winning. But he was on an organization that gave him what he needed to win.
Yep.
So,
and he was great. Listen, he'll end up going into the Hall of Fame. Like, listen, I'll even admit that. Like, right, you got to take the person, put the person aside, and then take a look at the skill set and everything that he's been able to do. He was a great quarterback, right? He's no longer that quarterback because he's 40-year-old quarterback that cannot throw the ball the way he wants it, and that's what made him so successful. Here's the thing. The problem is with Aaron Rodgers, you cannot divide that because of he brings that person, into the locker room. He does so much bullshit.
yeah.
Right? When he's blaming coaches, he's blaming players, but he's never taken accountability for his own actions.
Right. If he would have just been like, if he'd have just taken it all on himself, period, whether he liked it or not. But he's just not going to do that. His personality will not allow him. And, all the, I could care less what you do in the off season, what your personal beliefs and personal lifestyle is like. If you're my quarterback, I just want you to win. And I also don't want you to bring that crap to work either.
100%.
Once the season starts, it better be about football, not all this other mess.
Not about you going into a dark room and then,
if it works for you, that's fine.
The fuck?
If it works for you, that's fine. And if it helps us win games, I could care less. But the fact that you put it in everybody's face that it's better and you're better than them because of it, that's where you start rubbing everybody the wrong way.
Who the hell's going to want him now? Who's going to want him?
Exactly. And the thing is, I think he wanted to prove that if Tom Brady could do it, he could do it. I think that has something to do with it. In my mind, I think that's how he saw some things. Like, hey, look, Tom did this. And I'm as good or better quarterback than he is.
He's not.
You're not.
Let's be honest. He's not. What Tom Brady has is, Aaron Rodgers will never have. You know what I mean? Tom Brady was actually a really smart quarterback.
Yeah.
100%
He's a smart person. But Tom wanted to work at everything.
Yep.
And he held the expectation to the other guys above and beyond anything else. And those guys, I mean, it's even said people came to New England to play with Tom, not for Belichick. So that says all you need to know right there. People weren't going to
let's not take anything away from Belichick, because Belichick is a great head coach. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame. And now I'm really intrigued on what he's going to do at North Carolina, but that's a different topic. Right. But like I'm so intrigued by that.
Yeah.
But Aaron Rodgers again, and then and let's take a look at the ownership side of things, right? Then because Aaron Rodgers is not happy, you fire your head coach, right? He wasn't the reason that the team was bad. All right. Yeah. If anything, the defense got worse as soon as he got fired.
I think the defense gave up on the team and the ownership because they fired him.
Yeah.
I think they supported Saleh. They liked him as a head coach because he was one of their guys. He was a defensive-minded guy. And I just think they just said, we're going to stick it to ownership here for firing this guy. And you're right. Saleh wasn't the problem. He may not be the best coach either, but they weren't giving him the best tools to work with.
Then you get wide receivers saying that if Aaron Rodgers comes back, they want out.
Right.
Bro.
Yeah.
Like when you see that in the news, like you're Aaron Rodgers, you're sitting and you're hearing this and you're like, how do you not think to yourself, like, shit, am I the problem?
Right. Now, if you're Aaron Rodgers, you're like, well, those guys are idiots.
Like, don't you know who I am?
Yeah, exactly. So,
and you go on Pat McAfee and you're talking all this shit and you're calling people out. And then on top of that, you call people out and then you don't have the receipts to back it up.
Right.
That's my issue with Aaron Rodgers. It's just that he talks so much shit and never backs it up.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that two of these three teams have in common is bad ownership.
Yeah.
The Giants have great ownership. In my opinion, they've always been great ownership. I just don't know if they've hired the right people to run the football side for them lately.
I'll give the Giants credit when that news came out where what is his name? When he went for Philly, right? He made a commercial. Saquon Barkley, when he made that commercial about losing sleep and all that, right? Dion was like, I'm actually upset. You didn't call me. We could have played on this whole losing sleep. I've definitely lost some sleep because of this.
Right.
So he knew, right, that there was a mistake. At least he knew there was a mistake. But the problem is he did not get rid of the mistake. The person who made the mistake, he kept them.
Yeah. And that's where their dysfunctionality comes into play. Is you're traditionally one of the best ownership groups there is. People know
Yep.
your name only because you've owned the team forever and ever,
Yep.
not because you meddle. And now they know you because you screwed up and didn't get rid of a guy that screwed your whole organization up.
Right. And now oh God, that's so bad. Right. Because you have owners like the Haslams in Cleveland who need to be in the know. They need to be making the decisions. They're the ones who drafted Johnny Manziel. They're the ones who drafted Baker Mayfield ahead of Josh Allen.
Right.
I was like, man, we should be drafting Josh Allen. Josh Allen's during that time, he would have fit perfectly in that system. But no,
Yeah.
the ownership wanted that flashy player, that cocky player, and look what it got him. He's in Tampa. Granted, they just lost the playoffs, right? But still,
They're in the playoffs still.
Cleveland Browns are on vacation,
Right.
looking for a quarterback, looking for an offensive coordinator, looking for an offensive line coach. So, you know, and what really, really irks me, and sorry guys, I do apologize, but I know it's Browns take part. Like the fact that like the Buffalo Bills told them about their OC and exactly what the issue was, and the Browns still hired him.
Right.
What
Yeah.
the hell?
Exactly.
Look what happened to Buffalo as soon as they fired him and they got rid of him.
Yeah.
They got better.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, you know what? It was funny. The Carolina Panthers are not here, even though they have a pretty bad owner. The Carolina Panthers are not on this dysfunctional. If we're to top 5, maybe, but you know, we got to give top 4 to the Tennessee Titans. They are on it.
I think, and I don't know if the owner made a conscious decision, Tepper, that is,
Yeah.
to not be as involved, or maybe he is as involved. I don't know what the right word is, but like last year, with hiring Frank and then changing coaches and this, that, and the other, he was like overly involved. He was in the news for the wrong reasons.
He didn't
Blah
give
blah
Frank
blah
that
blah blah.
a chance either.
Right. So this year he brings in Canales, and he's like a ghost now. Like you don't see or hear from him, which is a good thing. I'm not complaining. I
Me
don't know if
either.
he made the conscientious decision or if it was a thing where Canales was like, I got to run the team. And he agreed to it. I don't
And
know.
leave me the fuck alone.
Right. But whatever it is, it's working. And I'm happy that it's working.
Yep. I agree. So, and then, we'll have you and me will sit down again. We'll talk draft, but as of right now, you're looking at the Giants number 1, Tennessee Titans number 2, Cleveland Browns number 3, the Raiders number 4, another dysfunctional team, the New England Patriots number 5, then Jaguars, Saints, Panthers, Chicago, and New York Jets.
See, I think a lot of what's going to happen in the draft will get clearer once some of these teams have our coach.
Yep.
And they know, and we'll get into this as we get closer to the draft. But I think Vrabel is a great hire for
in
the
New
Patriots
England, yes,
as of today. And then again, news today, which will be old news by the time this hits the airwaves, is Mike McCarthy's out in Dallas, and we'll see where he goes. I mean, it's one of those things like they didn't want anybody else to talk to him, which was their right because they had exclusivity to negotiate a new contract with him. I think he went in and he either asked for more money or more control than Jerry wanted to give him, knowing that if he asked for more control,
he was going to get fired.
He was going to be out more so than Jerry will give him money. He's not giving him control.
That's another bad owner right there. Like from the entertainment side, great owner. Entertainment, awesome. Football, so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been bad.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like he said, it's his money, it's his team, and he wants to run it the way he wants to run it. Fine. But when you're this bad for this many years, I mean, the last time they won a Super Bowl, I was 3 years away from being a dad. My son's 28 years
Jesus.
old. I mean,
Fucking hell. Well, my
it's
team has
like, come
never won
on.
the Super Bowl, right? They're the only team that never hosted or ever played in a Super Bowl. So,
Right. So, I mean, yeah, we could have a whole show on NFL owners
oh God, we could.
because there's so many
Maybe
bad
we
ones.
should bring that on during the DHC Sports Show. Talk about bad
Maybe
ownership. What do
so,
you think?
yeah. Yeah, that'd be a good topic to hit on there a little bit too.
Yep. So,
But yeah, where these coaches land, who gets hired, that's going to start dictating a few of the things because it's not a great draft at
no,
all. And there's so many teams that have needs that they're not going to be able to fill with the draft. So it's going to be interesting to see what players start changing teams too. What who gets protected, who doesn't.
correct. My friend, this has been a good conversation. I love it. Thank you for doing this with me.
Glad to
We'll
do
be
it.
doing this more often. I'm sure we'll figure some things out that we can disagree on. But I want to make sure a couple of things before we get going, guys. Make sure that you guys are following on Instagram, on Threads, Blue Sky, even Twitter. Make sure you go to the YouTube channel so that way you guys hit the subscribe button and like the show because and I say this because that's where we are also showing the DHC Sports Show, right? We do it every Tuesday, every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We talk about all sorts of sports. Apparently, there's a list going on, a bracket that'll be coming out soon of the things that Ed hates. Yes, some of the things that I hate when it comes to sports. Some people, some players, some teams. You got to tune in to listen to, and guys. So
Lots of options.
yeah. There's at least we went past the NCAA playoff college football playoffs, and we went straight to the NCAA college basketball playoffs because there's that many. So there's already some regions that have been named. So there's that. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you guys next time. And we'll if you guys, well, how about this? If you guys want some topics that we can discuss, we'll talk about, let us know. And then we will most certainly talk about them. We will see you guys in the next one.